Hey, you. Welcome back to Secrets with Maeve, the space for the conversations we usually keep to ourselves. I'm Maeve. Today, we're talking about something I know so many of us struggle with in silence. Stop being naive. Six lies women. Tellin' how to flip the script. Let's get into it. You don't realize it yet, but some of the words she's told you were never meant to reveal the truth. They were designed to protect her and test you at the same time. Listen carefully because this is where most men lose without even knowing they were playing a game. There's a moment in every interaction where a woman stops speaking facts and starts speaking in layers. Not because she's trying to deceive you in a malicious way, but because direct truth often feels too raw, too risky, too exposing. So instead, she wraps it, softens it, hides it behind words that sound harmless, but carry a completely different meaning underneath. And if you take those words at face value, you don't just misunderstand her. You slowly lose her respect. The first lie isn't even obvious. It sounds innocent. It sounds kind. It sounds like something a good person would say. I'm fine. You've heard it before. Maybe you even believed it. Maybe you thought, okay, she's fine. I'll give her space. I'll give her. But what you didn't realize is that this isn't a statement. It's a test of your awareness. Because when she says she's fine, in a moment where something clearly shifted, her tone, her energy, her distance, she's not asking you to walk away. She's watching to see if you notice what she's not saying. Most men fail right here. They either become overly reactive, pushing, questioning, almost begging for clarity, or they completely withdraw, assuming silence means peace. Both responses quietly signal the same thing. You're not grounded enough to read emotional reality, and that's where attraction begins to fade. The smartest way to handle this isn't to interrogate her or ignore her. It's to stay centered. You acknowledge, but you don't chase. You create space, but you don't disappear. You might calmly say, all right, if something's on your mind, I'm here. And then you step back into your own energy, because here's the truth. Most men never learn. Confidence isn't shown by how quickly you fix her emotions. It's shown by how steady you remain when emotions are unclear. When you react emotionally to her, I'm fine, you hand over control. When you stay composed, you take it back without force. And something subtle happens in that moment. She starts to feel your presence differently. Not as someone who needs constant reassurance, but as someone who can handle emotional tension without breaking. That's rare. And rare is attractive. Understand this deeply. Women don't always communicate to inform you. Sometimes they communicate to feel you, to measure your patience, your awareness, your emotional strength. So the next time you hear, I'm fine, don't just listen to the words. Watch the energy, feel the shift, stay grounded in yourself. Because the man who reacts to words will always be controlled by them. But the man who understands what's beneath the words, he becomes impossible to manipulate. There's another sentence that sounds polite, respectful, even honest, but underneath it, there's something far more complex happening. I'm just not ready for a relationship right now. On the surface, it feels like rejection wrapped in kindness, and most men accept it exactly as it sounds. They step back, they wait, they try to prove they're patient enough to be the right one later. But what they don't realize is this isn't about timing. It's about feeling. Because when a woman meets a man who truly ignites something deep inside her, certainty, excitement, emotional pull, readiness suddenly appears out of nowhere. Time rearranges itself. Doubts shrink. The same person who claimed they weren't ready becomes fully invested almost effortlessly. So when she tells you she's not ready, what she's often protecting is the truth she doesn't want to say directly. I'm not ready for this with you. And that truth hurts, but it's also freeing if you're strong enough to accept it without collapsing. This is where most men make a critical mistake. They try to negotiate attraction. They become more available, more accommodating, more understanding. They think if they just prove their worth, she'll change her mind. But attraction doesn't work like a transaction. You can't convince someone to feel something they don't naturally feel. And the more you try, the more you position yourself as someone seeking approval instead of someone who already knows his value. The smartest way to handle this moment isn't to argue, chase, or wait in the background hoping for a future that may never come. It's to accept it completely, not with bitterness, not with passive aggression, but with quiet clarity. You respond with something simple, grounded, and final. I understand, take care, and then you walk away, not as a tactic, but as a decision rooted in self-respect. Because when you stay after hearing that, you're not showing loyalty, you're showing a willingness to settle for uncertainty. And here's the shift most men never make. Your power doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from choosing where you invest your time, your energy, your attention. When you stop chasing people who are unsure about you, you create space for people who are certain. And something even more important happens. You rebuild your own internal standard. You stop accepting half an interest, mixed signals, and emotional hesitation as something you need to work through. You begin to expect clarity. That's when your entire presence changes. You become less reactive, less needy, less willing to compromise your peace for temporary validation. And ironically, that's when attraction starts to come naturally because you're no longer trying to force it. So the next time you hear, "I'm not ready for a relationship," don't hear it as a challenge. Don't hear it as something to overcome. Hear it as information, clear, honest, and valuable information about where you stand. And then make the decision most men are too afraid to make. Walk away with your dignity intact, because the man who can leave without hesitation is the man who never has to beg to stay. Then there's a line that feels flattering at first, almost like a compliment wrapped in intimacy. Yet, if you don't read between the lines, it can quietly chip away at your confidence. "I just want to be friends." At face value, it sounds harmless. She's being honest, right? But here's the hidden truth. Women rarely say this without reason. Sometimes it's a shield against vulnerability. Sometimes it's a subtle test of your boundaries. Sometimes it's a polite way to push someone away while keeping them close. Most men respond in one of two ways. They either collapse inward, feeling rejected, hurt, or unwanted, or they stay in the friend zone, hoping their loyalty, humor, or kindness will eventually flip her interest. Neither approach works. Both silently communicate desperation. Both signal a man whose self-worth is dependent on her approval. The smartest men see it differently. They recognize that just friends is not an emotional verdict. It's a mirror. It shows how she currently feels. And rather than trying to force attraction where it doesn't exist, they protect their own emotional economy first. You see, men who understand female psychology know that attraction isn't built on friendship alone. Respect, challenge, confidence, and presence are the fuels of desire. Being just friends rarely offers these, no matter how many inside jokes, late-night texts, or shared secrets exist. So, how do you handle it? You set a boundary with respect and clarity, not anger, not manipulation, not pleading. Something like, "I value what we have, but I'm not interested in friendship without more. I wish you the best." And then you step away immediately, not because you're punishing her, but because you're valuing yourself. You're sending a message that your time and energy are not disposable, that you will not exist in half interest or emotional limbo. What happens next is fascinating. Women notice even if they initially resist. Your refusal to stay in a friend zone out of desperation creates a magnetic tension. It isn't about guilt, it's about presence, confidence, and self-respect. That energy, far more than any words, draws attention. This is the paradox many men never understand. Attraction grows when you stop trying to chase it. The moment you stop clinging, the dynamic shifts. You're no longer an option to negotiate for, but a man who stands on his own terms. And the most surprising part, sometimes when she sees that, her feelings transform naturally. But even if they don't, walking away isn't a loss. It's liberation because your energy, your mind, your life is no longer tied to someone unsure about you. You're free to invest in someone who matches your intensity, your clarity, and your desire. Remember this, just friends is not a sentence. It's a signpost. And the smartest men don't argue with signposts. They follow them wisely, redirecting their energy to where it belongs. So next time you hear the words, feel the weight, but act with strength. Step back, honor yourself, and remember that true power in relationships is not in chasing approval. It's in commanding respect through your presence. Now listen carefully because this one's subtle and it trips up even the smartest men more than you realize. I don't care. It sounds like neutrality, like detachment, maybe even honesty. But the moment a woman says this, it's rarely about indifference. It's about testing your emotional weight, your boundaries, your ability to lead without needing constant reassurance. It's a quiet gauge of your energy. And most men fail this test without knowing it exists. Here's what happens when she says, I don't care. A man who's insecure reacts. He tries harder. He seeks validation. He argues, persuades, explains, sometimes even apologizes for caring too much. All of these reactions are invisible signals. But to her, they scream one thing: neediness. Neediness is the ultimate attraction killer. It signals imbalance, uncertainty, and a lack of self-sovereignty. Women are wired to notice it almost subconsciously. And once they feel it, the dynamic shifts. Respect diminishes. Emotional interest wanes. And no amount of logic or effort can replace that invisible loss. So what's the smartest way to handle this? You acknowledge it calmly, effortlessly, but you don't overreact. You don't explain. You don't fight for approval. You simply remain grounded in your presence. For example, if she says, I don't care, a composed response is silence at first, letting her energy speak. Later, you might calmly say, noted, and continue being yourself. Your energy doesn't hinge on her indifference. Your confidence doesn't crumble because she tries to test it. Here's why this works. She's not actually testing your knowledge or intelligence. She's testing your emotional stability, your ability to hold your own presence, regardless of her words. And when you pass, even silently, attraction is reinforced. She feels your strength without even realizing why. The smartest men internalize a key truth. Attraction is energy, not conversation. Words can mislead, manipulate, or confuse, but energy cannot. Your stability, your calm, your measured presence communicates far more than arguments or reassurances ever could. And this extends beyond just dating or casual interactions. In life, women mirror and respond to emotional certainty. When you remain steady, they respect it. When you react to their veiled challenges, they notice the weakness and instinctively distance themselves. So next time you hear, I don't care, don't hear it as an attack, don't treat it like a puzzle to solve. Hear it as a measure of your own composure and act accordingly. Stay grounded. Act with intention and maintain your energy as if it's your most valuable currency, because it is. Understand this deeply. A man who can weather indifference without panic isn't just attractive. He becomes magnetic. Women may test it 100 times, but your consistency turns tension into fascination, uncertainty into respect, and fleeting interest into lasting intrigue. Your presence becomes the anchor in an ocean of emotional chaos, and nothing she says can shake that without your permission. And here's the final truth most men miss. Controlling your reaction is the ultimate power. Not controlling her words, not her actions, not her decisions, but controlling your own energy in the face of them. That's where the smartest men win silently, powerfully, and irresistibly. Finally, there's the one that hides in plain sight. The The line that sounds like honesty, but is actually a mask for fear and uncertainty. I'm over him. It sounds simple, almost reassuring. She's telling you the past is behind her and you should feel safe, right? But very rarely is it that straightforward. When a woman says she's over him, she's signaling something deeper. She's testing whether you notice her emotional scars, whether you can hold space for her without judgment, and whether your presence feels safe enough for her vulnerability. Most men hear these words and immediately relax, thinking, perfect, no baggage, I'm in the clear. But this is exactly where many fail. Because while she says she's over him, her energy, subtle reactions, and emotional patterns may still carry traces of attachment, doubt, or comparison. If you ignore these signals and simply take the words at face value, you unknowingly step into a fragile dynamic unprepared. Here's how to handle it. The smartest approach isn't to question her, interrogate her, or try to fix her past. It's to observe, acknowledge, and remain steady. Your role isn't to heal her, but to show that your presence is consistent, secure, and strong. You become the calm in a storm she's not yet fully aware of. For instance, if she brings up her ex lightly or slips into old patterns, don't panic. Don't overanalyze. Instead, respond with a grounded presence. Maintain your energy, your confidence, and your emotional boundaries. Let her see that no matter what shadows of the past appear, your stability is unwavering. That alone commands respect, trust, and attraction. Women don't just fall for words. They fall for energy, security, and emotional reliability. And the more you anchor yourself in these qualities, the more she begins to trust not just your intentions, but the man you are at your core. This is why the smartest men don't get entangled in comparisons, jealousy, or proving their value. They understand that attraction grows when they are steady, strong, and aligned with themselves, not when they're trying to outperform a past relationship. Remember this: every lie, every test, every veiled sentence she says, I'm fine, I'm not ready, just friends, I don't care, I'm over him, isn't about trickery. It's about measurement. She's evaluating your emotional strength, your composure, and your capacity to lead your own life without needing her validation. And when you respond with awareness, calm confidence, and self-respect, something remarkable happens. You're no longer a man chasing approval. You're a man who demands it by default simply through the way you inhabit your presence. That's magnetic. That's irresistible. That's power in its purest form. Now, I want you to do something. Think carefully about your own approach in relationships and ask yourself if you could assign a number to your current emotional resilience. From 1 to 10, how steady are you in the face of her unspoken truths? Write your answer in the comments below. And if this video gave you insight you've never had before, hit like, subscribe, and share it with a friend who needs to hear this. Your awareness today can change the way you experience every connection.